If French is the language of love, what do you consider the others? English is the language of colonization. If you leave out French, and Spanish, and Portuguese, and Dutch, and English is the language of colonization. Fixed it for you colonials. Latin is the language of education. Latin is the language of demon summoning. Reading scientific name of a deadly organism summoned. Latin is the language of regretting that you picked Latin as one of your classes because it sounded cool. Quid Latin dictum sit, altum videtur. Esperanto is the language of people that bothered to learn Esperanto. The only people I know who've learnt it were bored and unemployed. Could you send for the hall porter? There appears to be a frog in my bidet. Red Dwarf is literally the only reason I know about Esperanto, haha. In Danny Phantom, Wolf speaks Esperanto. As an Esperantist, can confirm. Also, betcha you're an Esperantist too. Welsh is the language of not knowing how the alphabet works. Lines looks so nice in a word, but it's really the sound of clearing your throat. I'm learning Welsh, my third language, purely for fun. I'm also learning Dutch, my fourth language, as I hope to go to Amsterdam one day. Languages are so cool. I remember reading something about how I used to be a vowel, and my first thought was Welsh. W's a vowel, apparently that's how Welsh rolls. I think that Spanish is language of party. Help. My Reddit is in Spanish, and I don't know how to change it back. Lo siento, no SCMOAADARTE. Translation for those not cool people: I'm sorry, I don't know how to help you. Or at my man, there's only an accent in como, if it's an interrogative sentence. I haven't taken a Spanish class in over a year, but okay. Jajujatians ventinus con marguritas bunius tards. English is the language of the internet. Now, English is the language of mild contempt. Given that America has more English speakers than any two other countries put together, English is the language of very openly expressed contempt, as well as guns and monster trucks. I'm gonna blow your mind when I tell you that English doesn't originate from America. Neither do Americans, to be fair. Your mind is gonna be blown when you realize they never said English originated in the US. And, just to keep people off balance, relentless fake smiles. Russian is the language for sounding angry, but not actually being angry. That's all of Central and Eastern Europe really. My boyfriend is Polish and him and his mum were yelling at each other. I said when they were done, "You guys okay?" Sounded a bit heated. His mum was just asking if he wanted any juice from the shop. Once I overheard my husband and his mother arguing in Russian. They sounded really angry. I asked him later, "What were you guys fighting about?" He said, "Oh, we weren't fighting, we were discussing which Godfather movie is best." Coulda sworn they were angry, but apparently it was a friendly discussion. Klingon is the language of social awkwardness. Klingon is the language of Shakespeare. Dutch is the language of sounding harsh and rude. In reality, we are harsh and rude, but that's a little secret. Dutch is German, if they were friendly, and not stuck in caps lock. LOL is German. Dutch sound really cute and kind. Almost childish. Danish is the potato stuck in your throat language. I came here wanting to make the exact comment. C++ is the language of suffering. C is the language of being smug. Cantonese Chinese is the language of yelling and ordering dim sum in a crowded restaurant, and then more yelling. Correction: Cantonese is the language of every bad kung fu movie you've ever seen. American is the language of loud. Ugandan is the language of direction. #dead meme. Mandarin is the language of accidentally calling your mom a horse. Or calling someone dumb instead of teachery. You are a carrot leo 3 she 1 vs you are a leo 3 she 2. Mandarin is the language of a great dinner and a bedside glass of water. Bedside glass of water. If this is Mandarin we're talking about, then that glass of water is piping hot. I'm Chinese and I don't get this. Romanian, the language of graphically and biologically insulting people's mothers. Don't forget their dead relatives. Welsh is the language of cats stepping on a keyboard. That reminds me, some years back I visited a friend in Wales and we went to a pub. Can't recall the name, but it was something very Welsh with almost no vowels. Looks like someone named it by slapping their face on a keyboard, I said. I was told to be quiet as the Welsh don't take kindly to an Englishman being rude about their language. We may have just beaten them at rugby. You use French for your spouse, Italian for your family, English for your friends, German for your dog, Portuguese for your workers, and Spanish for your secret lover. Japanese is the language of chivalry. It's built around varying levels of politeness and honorifics. Italian is the language of music. Nearly all the terminology used in reading and writing music is Italian. Greek is the language of science. Spanish is the language of #dance. Japanese being chivalrous is a fun one, just because when most think of chivalry they think knights. The Japanese version of knights are infamous for brutalizing peasants. The European version of knights are also infamous for brutalizing peasants. Politely brutalizing peasants. I thought Italian was the language of love. Italian is a culinary language. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Actually, the easiest way is behind the collarbone, with a quick, plunging motion. Learn something new every day. As a chef, I disagree. French is the culinary language. Also love and food go together. Finnish is the language of alcoholism. Klingon is the language of virgins. German is the language of Ermom, because Freud. Canadian English is the language of being apologetic. German is the language of anger. Russian is language of Sakablayat. Russian is the language of CSGO. Simlish is the language of virtual babies on fire. English is the language of commerce. Can I just say how romantic German sounds to me? Also, Latin. I mean it spawned the Romance languages. German is love to me. I think French sounds nasally. French makes me think of the grey slush in the street after a snowstorm. I think it's the nasal vowels, R and J. Not my thing. Latin love poetry is the best. Check out some of it in Catullus. Euskara is the language of Pinxus. Finnish the language of alcoholists. Ahemperkali. Spanish is the language of conquest. English would like to have a word with you. Indian is the language of there is no such language as Indian and their constitution recognizes 22 separate languages. Polish, language of awkwardness. Russian deg.dddeg Belarusian deg.dddeg Ukrainian deg.dddeg Polish abka. Korean, the language of isolation. Little linguistics joke for you. Bask in your puns all you want, but I'm on to you. I once heard someone say Basque is the language the devil talks to his mother-in-law in. Polish is the language of plumbing. Well, I found the problem. The pipe is clogged with consonants. Russian is the language of communism. American is the language of over-militarization. Italian is the language of food and losing wars. German is the language of starting wars, and British is the language of losing the colonies to untrained farmers. German is a language of hate and war. If you don't agree, you don't know German. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Schmetterling aus. LASST das McFallen. German obviously is the language for naming things you don't care to know about. I'm German. My mom is German. I have lived there. You don't know German. German is the language of architecture, engineering, drama, opera, and of responsibility, self-accountability. Yeah. German is a wonderful language. Some idiot on Reddit watched too many Hollywood movies where Germans are always the bad guys, and now he thinks that makes it reality. Flugzeug, beer, Entschuldigung.